Okay guys, welcome to this month's video technique of the month. I got the pleasure of having with me David Jacobs, second degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under the Yamasaki lineage. He's the head instructor at the Fairfax Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Virginia, and he's kindly agreed to show you guys some techniques. Thanks a lot, David.
My pleasure. Okay. Should I give the techniques in an English accent?
If you can.
Okay.
Jolly good.
So starting from side control, I like to get the inverted triangle, and especially if I can get his arm between my legs here, right? If his arm is stuck up too high on my body, it's going to be difficult for me to do, but lots of times I can bring my knee over his bicep, and now I'm in good shape to get the inverted triangle. I'm going to take my arm that's scooping the head, I'm going to push his head, step over, lock up the triangle for control, not necessarily to submit him, but just to control his body. And now I've isolated his left arm. So I have several different choices of submissions I can do with his left arm, depending on his reaction, depending on how I can move him around. I want to keep his arm controlled the entire time though, and keep his torso and head controlled. I may have to occasionally open my legs if I'm moving around, but I always want to stay tight. So even if I open, I'm still tight, pinching my knees together. So the first thing I want to do, control his arm. I want to go for a Kimura grip, so I have to get my left arm underneath to get the Kimura grip. So I'm going to stay tight, and I'm going to use my head to guide the direction of his arm. So I'm tight, I'm coming in, I'm using my head to get a nice tight Kimura grip. I have both elbows on the mat here. That's okay. If to submit him, I have to lift his shoulder up, and I can submit him here, even with my elbows on the mat and him on the mat. I want to try to keep a bend in his arm. If he fights out of this and straightens it, I can still get a straight arm bar right here with his elbow. So that's no problem. But for a Kimura submission, I want to try to keep his elbow bent as much as possible. If I can't get the submission here where he's still flat on the back, it'll be very helpful to tilt him on his side. So to tilt him on his side, I'm going to turn his whole body, and I'm going to undo the triangle, and I'm going to step on the mat with my right foot. And again, I'm pinching together, pinching my knees together to keep him controlled. I can get the Kimura here. If he defends by bringing his hand inside, before he even grabs his own hand, sometimes people will put their fist in between their legs, or they'll grab the inside here, even before they're grabbing the hand. We'll get to that in a second. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull his own hand towards his chin. I don't want to start trying to get the Kimura here because he's defending, and I'll just be working against his grip. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull in. Even if he still has the grip, right? You can hold on to your lapel or whatever. It makes it much harder for him to keep the grip, and then I can come up and back. If he has too strong of a grip on his lapel or his belt, or he grabs his own hand, which is very common here, then it's going to be much more difficult for me to finish the Kimura. So I have to transition again, and here's where I like to transition to the straight arm bar. I take my left knee that's on the mat back here behind him, and I put it right on his ribs. Sit back, pinch everything together, even if he's still holding his hands. If you're not holding your hands together, great, I'm in good shape. But I want to keep everything together, pinch my knees, pull my heel in. And to finish the arm bar, first we'll do it if he does not have the grip. If he just has a there. So I'm pulling up, and to switch, to finish this, I'm not going to release his arm. I've got great control here. I don't want to release this. So what I'm going to do is just switch my hand around and finish it this way. So I'm always maintaining control. There's never a time where I release and try to re-grab. That would be a disaster, and he's going to escape that. And by the way, I've opened my knees here just to be loose, to show when you're actually doing this move, you want to keep everything nice and tight here. Okay. So sometimes he has a grip on his own hand. Right. This is very common. So it might be a little harder. We have multiple techniques for breaking the grip here, depending on if he's gripping like this, like this, like this. There's all various techniques to do. One that I find that works pretty well, I need to make some space between my hips and his body, and you have to do this carefully because one defense that he will do is to turn into me. So if I just casually come back like this, he's going to turn into me, and then I may lose this. So I'm going to keep this nice and tight, almost doing a bicep crusher, and that will keep him, what's the correct word? Secure. Keep him secure. If he starts to turn into me, right, I do the bicep crusher, and that keeps him compliant. That's the word I wanted. Okay, so that will keep him on his back. Once I make some space here, I'm still tight. I'm going to take my left foot, thread the needle through here, and stick it right behind his head. I've got my foot behind his head now. Now, for whatever reason, anatomically, physiologically, it's much harder for him to maintain this grip. So I come up here, much easier to break. So I need to make space to get this foot back here. If I'm too tight, I'll never be able to get my foot underneath. So I make a little bit of space. My foot comes through here, behind his head. Now this is jiu-jitsu. It's not ballet. So there are occasions where my foot may be pushing against his face to make the necessary space, but that's perfectly legal, perfectly legit. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Don't be afraid to do it. Just make sure your toenails are clipped, because you don't want to scratch your opponent in the face. But that's the first set of techniques. Good.